My most surprising reads of the year. These are books that I read that I was surprised that I enjoyed so much. I'm talking about 3 books, so they each get a little bit more time to breathe. But honorable mention to Earthsea. I am not going to talk about Earthsea just because I've banged on so much about it, and also I think it is the collection of the books as a whole that I love, so I'm not going to pinpoint one, but go and read Earthsea. I will put a link to Earthsea also in the description down below, where you will also get all the books that I'm talking about today from the description down below to bookshop.org. Bookshop.org is a company that works with small independent booksellers to get them a little bit of a kickback whenever you buy through them. Alternatively, pick up these books from your local library. Starting off with our favourite white boy, William Dalrymple's The Last Muggle. William Dalrymple is a mainstay on this channel. I know I've not read a Dalrymple book in a while, but I've been kind of more on a fiction kick the last few weeks or months. But that William Dalrymple tier ranking book video will come. Don't worry, I will make a video just on Dalrymple. But William Dalrymple's The Last Muggle was the first Dalrymple book I've read in a while. I think it was the one that kickstarted my desire to read all of his books, just in general. So I've read one of his books in the past. I can't remember which one. It might be The City of Jinn. But then I was like, let me just pick up this. Oh, I've had this book for a while, actually. The Last Muggle. And then I was like, oh, nice. This has kickstarted something. And then I went off and read at least 3 or 4 of his other books. I read The Return of a King, which is about more focus on Afghanistan. And then I also read about Mutiny, which is about the build up to the mutiny? No, this is about the mutiny. This is about just the build-up to British colonialism in India. So it was all about the East India Company and how the East India Company was handed over to the British, and then it led to the mutiny. But this was the one that kicked it all off, because this is about the 1857 mutiny, which essentially led to the British being like, oh, okay, we're going to just take over India off your hands, EIC, and also led to the fall of the Mughals, who were the last empire to rule India prior to the British and prior to now the India as a republic, or whatever it is under Modi, and then Pakistan and Bangladesh, etc. So really, really interesting book. Very interesting. If you're interested in Mughal history, I would read this. Maybe like, it depends how you want to read Mughal history. Do you want to read it chronologically? Because if you're reading it chronologically, this would probably be the last book to read. I would maybe read The White Mughals as well, talking about the British people who went to India and basically embraced Indian culture, or at least embraced Mughal culture, because obviously India, even though it was ruled by the Mughals, was a very diverse place, and even the Mughals didn't even reach South India, really, where I am actually from in India. But really recommend this. Very interesting. It is also, Dalrymple is very caring in the way he writes. Oftentimes you will get Western historians who will write about other places in the world and kind of undermine them, demean them, but Dalrymple doesn't. You can very much tell his love for the region. I think he opens this with talking about growing up in Delhi, or not growing up, living in Delhi and studying in Delhi for a while, I think, in the introduction. And just, Dalrymple very clearly cares about the subject matter. He very clearly cares about the history in a way that other historians do not when they're talking about other parts of the world. At the very least, he approaches it in a very different way, and I think that's why I like Dalrymple's books. And again, I'm saying The Last Muggle as the one that surprised me the most, because it was the one that triggered this desire to go off and read more Dalrymple books. I'm pretty sure he had a book that came out this year as well. He was doing a book tour. I was meant to go, but then family circumstances happened. I think it's called The Golden Road. So that's a brand new book that came out this year, but I've not read it yet. It'll probably be one I pick up next year. God, how big his books are, it might take me longer. But William Dalrymple, The Last Muggle, a favourite white boy, William Dalrymple, big up. It's the first surprise. Aisha Malik's This Green and Pleasant Land, arguably my favourite thumbnail I've made this year for a video. Unfortunately, I don't think the video did super well, but this book did genuinely surprise me. I picked it up maybe before last year, but I actually got around to reading it this year, and I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't know anything about Aisha Malik. I knew some of the people at the back, like Vaseem Khan is an author I've read who gave it positive, glowing reviews. So I was like, okay, it'd be interesting. Sometimes when books are written about ethnic minorities, even by ethnic minorities, they can maybe play into stereotypes about those ethnic minorities. It's hard to straddle that line between a stereotype and actually the lived experience, especially if you're trying to appeal to a broad audience. But I don't think this does that. I think this book genuinely talks about what it is like to be an ethnic minority in the UK. The struggles, the trials, the tribulations, the trying to connect with your culture, with your religion even. Maybe at a later date, maybe you're someone who's been disenfranchised from your culture and religion and now you're trying to seek it out. The struggles you have with family relations, the struggles you have with maybe people who live around you who don't really understand what you're going through, who have a very different aspect and view on life, and also the people who, even though they live very different lives to you, actually want to learn about your life. They want to actually acknowledge what you're going through. They want to learn more, and even though you might be a bit unsure about that, you do come out your shell and you talk about it. And it also, beautifully so, I love the way it talks about older minorities living here, maybe my grandparents' age most likely, who sometimes they assimilate and integrate super easily into society, super easily integrate into the local area and the people around them, but sometimes they're people who maybe struggled with it, maybe they struggled with the language, but eventually at their older age, they want to acknowledge it, they want to go out and live more, and it just the heartbreaking feeling you feel for them as, you know, an ethnic minority like myself who was born and raised here, who has the privilege compared to them of learning English as my first language, going and getting an education in an English-speaking school, getting a possibly a higher quality of education, and, you know, being more integrated into the local culture, the local surrounding than maybe they were able to when they came here, when racism was even more obvious, was even more widespread. Obviously, racism is incredibly widespread this year. We've seen race riots on the streets, but maybe even more ingrained, even more violent for them. And I think this book just hits all of those emotional peaks, you know, as someone who over the years has gotten more into knowing about and acknowledging what it's like being an ethnic minority, you know, becoming more attuned and proud of my cultural background, and also the fact that I am an ethnic minority, but I'm still British. Gotta go into a whole spiel, but it genuinely did hit all those beats. So I'm glad I picked this up. I'm glad I saw this in a secondhand bookshop. I think it was Scuba Books in London. I'm glad I read this year. I was pleasantly surprised, which is what this video is all about. Pleasantly surprised. And there were many other books that surprised me, but these were the top 3. And coming in, and I think at the very top of the surprise to me that I enjoyed this book, Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. I had to double check I read it this year, but I read it right at the beginning of this year. It was like the 3rd book I read this year, and I read it through most of January. I am most surprised by this book because I'm surprised I got through it. Because if you know me, classical literature and me, we do not mix. I do not have the capacity in my brain to get through classical literature, and especially to get through it at a good speed. And I think this book actually took me like the whole month to read, which I don't mind. I think this actually benefited from me taking so long to read this book, taking so long to understand the book, and I genuinely thoroughly enjoyed it. Sometimes I'll read classical literature and I'll be like, didn't really enjoy that. I think Wuthering Heights I read this year as well, and it just wasn't for me. But then I read Emma as well later, and I was like, damn, Emma's messy as hell, bro. I enjoyed that. So I think more and more I'm getting into enjoying classical literature, and I think reading Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment kind of was like, oh, I believe in myself to now be able to read classical literature. I believe myself to be able to read Russian classical literature. I went off and I read White Knight, which I know is a short story of Dostoevsky's, I think on a flight this year, and then I left it in my hotel for someone else to pick up, and I hope someone else has. But yes, I think Crime and Punishment, which way is it? This way. Crime and Punishment is a surprise for me because I didn't think I'd be able to read it, and then I read it and I enjoyed it, and just, yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised by the fact that I enjoyed Crime and Punishment, and I actually feel like I would like to reread it. I think I'll give it a few years before reading it again. I think I need to start doing that again, being, you know, as I become an old man, I already have grey hairs in my hair and my beard. You know, I'm getting old now, apparently. I should start rereading these books because just, I'm so glad I enjoyed this. I'm so surprised I enjoyed this. I'm happy that I genuinely, thinking back to when I read this book at the beginning of this year and thinking, oh my God, I read Crime and Punishment. It was that book where people would be like, oh, you should really read Crime and Punishment, guys. It's on the top 100 books you need to read in your life. And I was like, oh. And like when you see like the Penguin Classics cover, you're like, is that for me? Is that really for me? And then I read it and I enjoyed it and I loved it, and I'm glad that I did. So those are 3 books that surprised me this year. Obviously there are other books. I'd give them honorable mention to Earthsea at the beginning of this video. There are probably many others, but those are the 3 standouts I could think of. Let me know in the comment section down below if you've read any books that surprised you, that you really enjoyed this year. I would love to know. As always, in the description down below, you can pick up these books from bookshop.org. Bookshop.org works with local and small independent booksellers, so a little bit more of a kickback when you buy through them. Alternatively, pick up these books from your local library. Before we go into the member shout out, I want to say over the next 2 weeks, there's not going to be Wednesday videos. So upcoming Wednesday is Christmas Day, and I'm sure you have better things to do than watch my videos. And the following week, I think, is New Year's Day. Well, it is New Year's Day. You've got better things to do than watch my videos. Chill out. I also would like the break. There will likely be Saturday videos. Maybe I'll skip one of them, but as it stands, videos will go out on the Saturdays anyway, but no Wednesday videos for the next 2 weeks. Just, I want a break. You deserve a break from me. We're going on a break. Huh? We're on a break? But yeah, just letting you know, if you got to this point, you're probably a regular viewer, so there's going to be that slight break. And now going to the member shout outs. These are my lovely members. Thank you guys for being members. Members get special videos, get special shout outs at the end of all the videos. They get special emojis. They get input into what videos I'm going to be making. They get input into my thumbnails. I'm going to probably start a special series just for them in the new year. That's something I'm going to be planning over my break for a couple of days. And yeah, it is £2 a month if you want to join. If you don't want to, that's completely fine. You getting to this point in the video, you liking, subscribing and sharing the video with a friend or family member does more than enough for me. Thank you for watching. I hope you read a great and surprisingly great book today.